Hello, GR200. We're back. Final video of the semester, week 14. We do not have new material the last week of classes, so this is the last week where we have new material. We have a couple things going on right now. The midterm has opened. We leave it open for 2 weeks. So it will close Friday at 11:59 p.m. on the last day of classes, which is April 28th. I left it open for 2 weeks this time because some people have a really hard last week of classes and you've got a ton of projects due and midterms, whatever. So sometimes it's, for a small percentage of the class, you might be just raring to go to take that midterm early and get it out of the way. So
remember, you have 2 hours to take the exam when
unless
you do
you've got OSAS accommodations. If I have you set up for OSAS accommodations, I sent out an email, I think Friday night. So if you didn't get an email and you should be getting OSAS accommodations, let me know before you take the test.
Here's the other thing. I mean, even though you don't have a lecture next week, you do have
final interview paper.
You have a paper coming up. So, this is such a great time to get out your phone and archive your parents or grandparents. These videos will be with you for life. So take advantage of this opportunity.
So that paper's due the first day of final exams. It's due at 11:59 p.m., end of the day. We do accept late papers, but we are required to get our grades in, so you can't be super, super late.
Yeah.
But let us know if you have a conflict and if you're going to have to turn it in late. You will lose 2 points per day because it's a 20-point paper, so it's 10% per day is the penalty. Usually the final interview paper is about 50% the questions and answers, and then 50% is you analyzing and discussing the answers. So let's say you talk to them about their health problems and they say, well, I have high blood pressure, or I have diabetes, or I have cancer. Then you might go on the internet and go to the American Cancer Society or the NIH or something like that and just throw out some statistics about how common that disease is and what, how common it is for older people to have that disease, and relate it back to the study of gerontology and the things that we talked about this semester in class. If you need to have 10 outside references, you can use references from the class readings, but they will not count towards your 10 outside references. You need to cite them in the text. So that's where people sometimes lose points. They don't have all 10 references, or they don't cite them in the text.
And that's all laid out in the description. So,
yes, and I'll send out an email with tips.
And yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, you guys did great on CT too, so that's a big question. Ask your parents if they've been up to date on their IRAs. Did they ever do a Roth IRA? What do they think about it? 401k. These are, you can use the Internal Revenue Service as a citation in terms of rules and regulations, and look up things like the Wash Post articles. There's a lot to go from here.
And we've given you sample questions in the assignment directions. You can feel free to add to or subtract from. Maybe you're doing the interview and the person that you're interviewing, you don't feel comfortable talking to them about a certain topic. That's okay to leave that out and put something else in. As long as you cover a variety of topics so that the paper isn't only about financial issues or only about health issues. Make sure that you cover a range of things that we've talked about this semester.
All right, so let's go into our weekly assignments here. Awesome. It's kind of bittersweet. Last week, you should pat yourself on the back. You look at just the really broad spectrum of specialties now that you guys are familiar with. And it is a really amazing life skills class. And so we're ending with the best for last, kind of a more important one for the last. And this is estate planning, something that you had to go through. And this is something you talk to your parents about and put it on your paper. How, do they have a trust? Do they have a will? Why? Blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Super important.
And long-term care, which is very important.
Yeah. And, and like I said, so for a lot of you guys, you've done just amazingly well, and you've absorbed a lot. And for a lot of you, it's just been one big Coachella this semester. So there you go.
We understand.
It's up to you. You learn if you want to. Okay. All right.
Okay. So let's talk estate planning and long-term care. We have 2 articles that we've given you to look at. One of them is the American Bar Association, so that's the lawyer version. One of them is AARP, and it's kind of the more simplified version. And I thought it was kind of good to have 2 different perspectives. Now, most lawyers will tell you have to hire a lawyer, you have to get an expert in estate planning. There's really big consequences to not doing this correctly. But I also feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't have wills and don't have trusts. And at some point, it's good to get something down on paper, even if it isn't perfect. So the AARP article kind of presents the opposite perspective of, hey, here's some low cost, no cost options that are available online where you can do your own will, and it's probably going to be fine. And we'll talk about, what the issues are surrounding that. So open up the ABA article. And one of the terms that you'll hear, there's a lot of legal terms of art that are associated with estate planning. One of the terms that you'll hear is intestate. Intestate means that someone died without a will. So what happens if you die without a will, whether you're 18 or whether you're 80, the state that you live in the United States will have laws in the probate code that say this is our rules for intestate succession. And that means that your state gets to decide who gets the money. And typically it would be your spouse, or maybe your spouse and your children. If you don't have a spouse and you don't have children, it might go to your parents, it might go to your siblings. If your parents and siblings predecease you, or you don't have parents or siblings, then you might go up to your grandparents. If your parents have predeceased you, then it might go to your grandparents' descendants. So you can see how if someone doesn't have a will or a trust, it can get kind of complicated.
What if you had like a nasty breakup, but you never got around to finalizing your divorce? Guess who's going to get all the monies?
Yes, unfortunately, in a lot of states, if you file for divorce but it's not finalized, your ex might get your money.
And then remember we talked about elder abuse, okay? So let's say you have that deadbeat child that has actually been doing financial abuse for your whole life, and then the siblings are like, we should have done more, and then they end up getting all the money.
Yes.
So so you got to be careful.
There's a lot of things to worry about. If you are 24 and you don't have much property and you don't have a lot of assets, you might think that you don't need a will. But what if you have children? If you have minor children, the really important thing about having a will is that you can say who you want to be guardian for your minor children if you die. So if Lord help us, if you die at Coachella or you get into a car accident or something terrible happens to you unexpected and you don't have a chance to plan and you have children, you want to make sure that your kids are going to be taken care of. And a court will certainly look at, oh, you've made this decision that this person should be guardian, and they will take that into account and they will give it a lot of deference.
And you got to be careful with the guardian because they can take all the money.
And you can also set up your plan so that one person is the guardian of the child and a different person is the guardian of the money, because maybe you have a relative who's very nurturing and has parenting beliefs that are consistent with your beliefs, but they're terrible with money. And you don't want to stress them with having to deal with the money. And maybe you want to have a second person deal with the money and pay the bills and things like that. So, why would you also want to have a will? So I use this as an example. Prince, the musician, he did not have a will. Now, he wasn't that old when he died, but he wasn't that young either. So, and he certainly has an enormous estate with his lifetime of music that he's created. He wasn't married. He didn't have children that we know of. And now he's got something like 25 or 30 people claiming from his estate. And it's everything from siblings to people that say, oh, he married me in secret, or he was my dad, or, a guy he met in a bar that said, well, he promised me he was going to leave me his catalog of music, so very kind of weird, sketchy things. And the court is now, and his estate are spending millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out who has the right to inherit and who doesn't. And so, he had plenty of money. His estate's probably worth a lot of money, but it's
could have been a lot faster.
It's going to lawyers and accountants instead of family members. So that's kind of a shame when that happens. So what does a will do? It allows you to say who gets your property. It allows you to say who's going to take care of your children. And so it allows you to make these real basic, important decisions. Even if you just have a bank account and a car, that's enough. Maybe you want to say who's going to get your personal property. So that's kind of important to have. You could say, for example, leave a gift to a charity. You could leave a gift to USC. You could leave a gift if you're in a fraternity or sorority. You could leave a gift to that fraternity or sorority. You could leave a gift to any nonprofit. Florida allows you to leave money to your pet, so you can leave money to your dog. And so there's a lot of stuff that you can handle in your will. What does it not do? A will cannot pass what we call non-probate assets. So probate is the process of distributing your estate. Usually you go through court if it's under a will. But you have a lot of stuff like life insurance, your 401k account, your bank account, things like that, where you might have filled out a beneficiary form. You should have filled out a beneficiary form.
Definitely.
That will allow you to transfer on death. It's called TOD or POD, transfer on death or payable on death. And so you might have these non-probate assets that pass outside of your will. So your life insurance, et cetera. So you make sure that you update those beneficiary statements. You take a look at them every 5 years, or if you get married or divorced or have children or have a falling out with your, friends or relatives or whoever you might have designated as a beneficiary. So keep those updated. There are many, many cases that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court where someone got divorced, forgot to change their beneficiary statement, wanted their life insurance or their 401k account to go to their child, and instead it went to their ex. And that's kind of sad when that happens. So make sure you look at that. You also might hold accounts. This is not true in every state, but for example, in California, you can own a bank account or a home as joint tenants with rights of survivorship so that title passes automatically on your death. It's got weird tax implications, so I don't necessarily recommend that. It's easy for someone. You might have someone say, well, I don't need to have a will because my home is joint tenants with right of survivorship. But you lose some of the tax advantages of passing property through a will, where the person who inherits the property gets what we call a stepped up basis for taxes. And then if they turn around and sell that house, it would they wouldn't have to pay a lot of tax on the gain that they get from it. So a little more complicated, but I'm just to make the point that there's tax issues associated with how you handle your estate and how you handle your estate planning.
Right here too. So, all right. Beneficiary.
Yes.
I keep playing that.
Now you might want, and we have this set up, you might want a will with a trust. So trusts are really great.
Am I in the right spot here?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You might want a will with a trust. Trusts are really great in a state like California. Going to court is expensive. Lawyers charge a lot of money in California. So instead of paying a lot of money for your probate process under a will, you can create a trust. So you pay the money up front. For John's brother, we found a lawyer because John's brother's estate isn't that complicated. We found a lawyer that I think for less than $1,000 created a trust, moved the title of his home into the name of the trust, and did a will in addition to that. And he also did his healthcare power of attorney and his financial power of attorney for him. So he got a whole kind of suite of documents done.
So is the trust more automatic then?
Yes, trusts are very simple.
Versus the reading of the will and having because you were just recently reading your dad's will, you were the executrix, executor of the will, and it was a bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so if you have a trust, you move your assets into the name of the trust. So our checking account and our savings account is in the name of the trust. Our house is in the name of the trust. And then if we go to Coachella and get hit by a car or something like that, and sadly pass away, then for our kids, it's really easy. They just need to get a death certificate, and then they can go transfer the title of our house immediately into their names and do whatever they want. So it's super, super easy. It's quick. You don't have to go to court. And going to court,
there's very little conflict. Whereas with a will, there can be parties that can make the process difficult, and there can be conflict.
Yeah.
You have siblings potentially fighting for their rights, and it's a mess.
My dad lived in Louisiana before he passed away, and in Louisiana, trusts are not very common. They have a more simplified probate process. It's a little bit less expensive, and he didn't have a huge estate because most of his assets passed outside of probate through beneficiary designations. But it's going to cost probably $8,000 or $10,000 in attorney's fees, and potentially more if we get involved in more complicated issues to resolve his estate.
And there can be a across the table conflict when
yes.
when you're doing it. I'm just being real. Whereas when you set up a trust, it just happens.
As you know, families are hard, and some families are harder than others. And so my family,
that's the issue with a will.
I was named the executor. The siblings weren't happy. There's some possibility of lawsuits being filed, et cetera, and that will cost more money. And so because the estate is being divided up between my dad's three kids, the more controversy and conflict we have, the less estate we have, the less assets we have to split up. We'll be paying lawyers and we'll be paying accountants to deal with the conflict. Whereas if there had been a trust, it would be a little bit harder for that to happen. But it's all fine. Okay. It's all fine. Yes. Okay. It'll be okay. So anyway, when you sign a will, you want to make sure that it's notarized, or that you use witnesses to make sure that someone can verify that you signed the will, that you were competent and aware of what you were doing. You want to make sure that if you use witnesses, that they aren't, both of the witnesses aren't beneficiaries under the will, so that they're neutral third parties that don't benefit. Yeah.
And so we've gone over these bullet points basically, haven't we already?
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about trusts, you are the grantor or the settler. So I'm the grantor if it's my trust. And so John and I created a trust together. It's the Walsh Family Trust. We're the grantors. We grant our property into the name of the trust. The people who will get the money, our two sons, they are the beneficiaries under the trust. And so if I die first, then John runs the trust. If he dies first, then I run the trust. I think if both of us die, then Matt, our older son, would be the number one, and then our younger son would be number two, just because he was just turned probably 21 the last time we updated it. So yes. So you also, like I said, as you could do under a will with a trust, you could have one person have guardianship of your children and the other person have the financial responsibility. So you can split up those responsibilities under a trust.
That's kind of indicated up here. Then
the other thing that people do is they set up something that's called a spendthrift trust, where let's say you have a child or a grandchild who you don't want to give them all of your assets at one time. You're worried that if you throw a ton of money at someone when they haven't really established themselves yet, that it may not be great for them. And so you give them payments. You might give them payments at 25, 30, 35, 40, and spread it out so that people aren't overwhelmed by getting the assets all at once. So that would be one way of handling if you want to make sure that the money lasts for someone. The other thing that you want to be aware of is if you have, say, 401k accounts, brokerage accounts, IRAs, Roth IRAs, annuities, to make sure that you have those beneficiary forms filled out. There we are. Sorry. To make sure you have those beneficiary forms filled out. And if you get married, divorced, have kids,
keep changing your beneficiary form. Don't leave that divorced person in there.
If any of those life-changing events happen, you want to make sure you've updated your beneficiary forms. Okay.
So it's complicated, but it's just, if it's legal, then it happens. You may be like, well, no, my dad didn't intend for that to happen. Too bad.
The other thing that's cool about retirement benefits, so I have a pension. I've probably talked about it before. And I have the right to leave my spouse a spousal benefit. So if I predecease John, he gets to continue to collect my pension for the rest of his life. And people in his family live to be well into their 90s, close to 100. So that's a really cool thing.
Except if you surf all the time, then
he may be in bad shape.
Go more quickly than you think.
He may be in bad shape, but he's going to live forever. So you probably have, if you or your family member has a pension, you have the right to either collect a little bit more money, and then your beneficiaries get nothing when you die, or a tiny bit less. And I think for me, it was something like $50 less a month, and then he can collect it
So
for
that's a
forever. So that's
pension
kinda cool.
and annuities that we talked about before. That's just something that you would be purchasing, just like you do. You go out and you invest your money in a 401k or an IRA. But annuities, you
Yeah.
purchase this insurance policy from an insurance company, and again, the beneficiaries are written into it, and the proceeds of that would then go to the person you've written in.
Now,
So.
if you have right now already, if you're ahead of the game and you've already opened a Roth IRA or a brokerage account or a checking account or a savings account, you can go in usually to your bank's website, find the form to fill out the beneficiary form and fill it out online. And you can do that. It's gotten to be a lot easier than it used to be. Occasionally you'll deal with a company that requires you to fill out a paper form and send it by mail. But it's becoming a lot easier to do these things online. So make sure that you have that. And I have a little notebook with all the forms and everything in the notebook so that our kids will have that information if they need it. Okay, I want to look at the AARP article. Okay, so the AARP article is kind of a looser, motivating attempt to try to get people to develop their estate plan, because the article talks about the fact that 30%, basically one out of three, people over 65 do not have a will or a trust.
And there can be a surprise death. And that's what this graphic is all about, if you haven't figured it out. This wax seal on the statement, like it was the paper, is the COVID virus, and a lot of people were not set up during the pandemic. And so there were a lot of issues that came.
And that motivated us to update our trust and our will, because during the COVID pandemic, we were like, whoa, stuff's happening. People are getting sick and they're in the hospital, they're gone. Things were happening fast to a lot of people. So we wanted to have everything set up and organized and, just ready, and nobody ever likes to think about these things. You don't like to think that you're not going to live forever. But it's a gift to your family members when you do go through this planning process. And it was so helpful to me that my dad did get a will, and he wasn't the kind of guy that liked doing stuff like that. He wasn't the kind of guy that liked, planning for his death. He probably kind of figured, hey, I'm going to be gone. It's not my problem. But he did go ahead and do it. And it's been a blessing because
the fight that would have happened if it wasn't there. Oh my God.
Because as a lot of families have, my parents were together for like 30 years. They split up. They both remarried. They were together with their second spouses for 30 years before they died. And so if he had not put together a will, it would have really been bad for my stepmom, and it would have created a lot of conflict and strife, in the family.
She would have been left hanging financially.
So it would have been really bad for her. But anyway, so why do people not do estate planning? They don't have time. They're just putting it off. They don't want to think about dying. They don't have a lot of assets. It's too expensive. They don't know how to find a lawyer. And so the cool thing about this AARP article is that it kind of gives you some pointers on where you can go to get online low cost or no cost estate planning help.
So we talked about this already, the healthcare directive. All right. So that part can be all part of the package. Right? All right, cool. Right.
Exactly. Right. And so, there's this website called Cake. There's a website called Free Will. Quicken. You can, I think, go to Costco and get the Quicken Will Maker and Trust. And so there's various websites where you can get it done for, less than $100 or almost nothing. But, you can also, what I find is you just ask your friends and your family and your neighbors, hey, do you have a will? Where'd you get it done? What's the guy? Did you like the person you used? Were they expensive? And for most people, if you don't have complicated financial issues, it won't be that expensive to get a trust and a will put together.
That one. Have them anyway. Get it done.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it is a good thing to get things organized because my dad would not have wanted his money to go to paying lawyers and accountants. You know, he would have wanted it to go to his beneficiaries. And he worked hard his whole life to make sure that he had a little something left. Even though he lived to be 85, he still had something left to leave for his kids and his wife. So that's what people want. So when you set up your will, you pick an executor. So that's the person who carries out your wishes. That's the person who's in charge of your estate. That's the person who will pay all your bills. They'll pay for your funeral out of the estate's assets. They'll pay for your medical bills that happen right before you pass. They'll pay for the lawyer if you need to hire a lawyer to go through probate. And so you need someone who's detail oriented, someone who's trustworthy, someone who doesn't have their own financial problems, because they will have access to your estate assets and they'll have assets. I'm in the process of opening up a bank account for the estate to handle the funds. And, you don't want someone to have.
Our dogs are crying. Come here, guys.
Our sad dogs. They're sad because we're talking about wills.
Yeah. No, it's a squirrel.
It might be a squirrel. But anyway, so you want that person to be reliable. So it may not, be careful. Like I was the young, yeah, don't cling to tradition. It doesn't necessarily have to be the oldest child. In my family.
How about this one? No.
In my family, my middle sibling had a lot of financial problems his whole life, so he wouldn't have been a good choice. My older sibling made death threats against my stepmother, and so she wouldn't have been a good choice because, once you threaten to kill someone, you can't be, executor, or that should be in the law, I think, anyway. So you're just not a good choice. So anyway, wow, dogs are very sad right now.
I can go get them.
Okay. And remember, as the AARP article points out, usually when you go through your estate planning process, you're going to get this whole group of documents. You'll get your power of attorney for financial. You'll get your power of attorney for healthcare. You'll get your trust. And even if you have a trust, you usually need a will that's called a pour-over will that handles any assets that haven't been transferred into the trust, like your car or something like that. So, all righty. So I want to talk, okay, I'm going to have to get out of this, and John's not here, so I'm probably going to screw it up. I'm going to get out of there. Okay, I'm doing it. It's not bad. Okay, so I want to talk long-term care. Long-term care is something that most people are going to need in some way as they get older. So long-term care can be care that you receive in your home, like home health care or home care. It can be adult day care. It can be nursing home care. It can be assisted living care. And
we've talked about this in previous weeks' discussion, but this is the nuts and bolts, and it's costly. The people next door was $400 a day. It can be absurd. Because they needed intense 24-hour care. So.
And usually where people have challenges, and this is one of the big concerns for gerontologists, because we have this silver tsunami, this large amount of people in China, in India, in France, in Italy, in the US, in Japan, and South Korea, that a large amount of people are getting older. How are we going to pay for their care? And in the US, Medicare pays for some things, but they don't pay for extended nursing home stays. After 100 days, you're kind of on your own. So some people buy long-term care insurance. My experience with my dad, he had long-term care insurance, and it was a battle. I probably spent 200 hours providing them with documentation, following up, calling them, filing things on the internet.
And he wanted in-home care. He needed in-home care.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go into a nursing facility.
Yeah.
They're supposed to pay for it. They fought just long enough so that
he died.
He died.
They know that when.
And guess what? He got no return on that investment.
He paid into it for 20, 30 years, probably paid $60,000, and he might have gotten $2,000 or $3,000 back. So be careful if you buy long-term care insurance that you go with a good company.
And his was supposedly, what was his name?
No, his company was known for being this way. So, but anyway, So you can go into the What is Long-Term Care PDF from the National Institute on Aging. And usually when you need long-term care, it's because you need help with activities of daily living. So activities of daily living are eating, dressing, bathing, getting, toileting,
There's a video of that here, what you can find.
transferring from your bed to your chair, getting out of bed. So help with just the basic activities that you have to do during the day, activities of daily living. Sometimes you'll see that abbreviated ADLs. Now, long-term care, if it's assisted living or nursing home, you're probably going to get meals. You might get transportation to doctor's appointments or transportation to go run errands, things like that. Sometimes you need long-term care for a short period of time. When my dad his health was starting to decline, he had pneumonia. He was in the hospital for a few weeks. He went into a facility for another week or two, and then he came home because he was able to recover. So you might have a short-term crisis where you need round-the-clock care, and then you can go back home. Who needs long-term care? Older people. Women more than men, because typically women may be outlive their spouses if they're married. Single people more than married people. Now, my stepmother was a saint, is a saint, and she took amazing good care of my dad throughout his illnesses that he had before he passed away. And so she enabled him to stay at home when it would have been really difficult for him to stay in his house.
They gave her a sense of purpose.
Yes.
They had meals regularly, and then what happened after he died? She lost how many pounds? And
Yeah.
because all of a sudden her purpose was kind of gone, and she stopped eating. And this is what happened.
So, and if John makes a good point, if you lose a grandparent, pay attention to the other surviving spouse, because that period of time after the person dies, they are very vulnerable and under a lot of stress, and they may not be eating and taking care of themselves. People that have more health problems are more likely to need long-term care. You may have family history of issues that are going to make you more likely to have long-term care if you have family histories of poor health. So we talked about home-based care. Home health care is paid for by Medicare. Home care, which is what a lot of people need, where you just need someone to come help you with your medications, make food for you, do your laundry, do some housekeeping. That's out of pocket. That's usually cash or long-term care
This
insurance
is a
paying
big
for
one.
that.
I mean, you think, oh, well, I'm just taking a pill, but scheduling it and making sure you're taking your medication on the right day, the appropriate amount is a big one.
Yeah, and of course, older people tend to take more medications.
Yeah.
And people, as they start to develop dementia, the things that they typically experience problems with initially
Sorry, that was me.
are taking their medications at the right time, right dose, and paying their bills. Those are the two things that we see early when people start to
And this
develop
is the old school
dementia.
thing that I wish we had more of. We tried to help out as much as we could with our neighbors, but this is the in the blue zone vernacular, they call them moais, where communities help each other out. And so, as best you can, if there's an older member of your community, reach out to them and help them out.
Yeah. And so home health care is speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, wound care. You can get a home aide that might help with dressing the person and helping the person shower and things like that, paid for by Medicare. The home personal care services tend to be more bathing the person, dressing the person, and are paid for by cash.
And this one right here, that's a stickler too. The getting one that's approved by Medicare, right? I mean, there's fly-by
Yeah,
nights, so.
what we're seeing and what we saw with my dad's care is that because of the labor market and the effect of the pandemic, they didn't have home health aides in his home care agency. He had a great home care agency and had people coming every day to help him, but they didn't have someone that could help dress him or bathe him, and so that was left up to my stepmom. Okay, scroll down a little bit more, You might need transportation, because let's face it, we talked about loneliness last week and elder abuse and how people who are isolated are more vulnerable to elder abuse. If you've got good transportation services, that helps. People can get out to the doctor, they can get out to church, get out to, bingo or whatever it is that people like to do. I'm excited about technology, these emergency medical alert systems. We have the ones that have been around forever, like Life Alert, where you push a button and you wear the thing around your neck. It's kind of big. But if you have an Apple Watch, you can send messages, I think, from your Apple Watch. Your Apple Watch will alert if you fall. So there's a lot of new technology that people can wear if you have someone who's living alone, but you're worried that they might be a fall risk, or you're worried that they might, fall in the shower and not be able to call for help. And so that technology will help keep people in their homes longer.
In the future is Alexa-like stuff too, where you'll have microphones all over the place, and you'll just like, "Hey, I need help!" Boom, and you just and it'll AI it and send it out, and boom, and everything will be automatic.
Or you might have technology where you can see that the person hasn't opened the refrigerator yet today. You think, okay, they must be stuck in bed, something's going on. Long-term care planning, you got to plan to pay for it. And so that's a really big challenge. A lot of people over 65 do not have big financial resources. And, Social Security is average Social Security payments about $1,800 a month. Once you pay rent and you buy groceries, there's not a lot left.
Like I said, it can be from $100 a day to, hundreds of dollars, depending on what your needs are. It's crazy.
So why don't you get out of this one and go into the Genworth calculator. So we wanted to, it's right here, click on that. So we wanted to give you an example of a website that shows how much long-term care costs. And it can vary a lot. So the difference between a place like LA with a higher cost of living and a place like Texas or Louisiana that has less governmental oversight and lower wages. It can be, for example, your annual cost to be in a nursing home can be over $100,000 in LA, and it can be maybe $60,000 in Texas or Louisiana. And then in a place like Hawaii, where it's even more expensive to live, it might be 30% more. So it might be $130,000 a year to be in a nursing home in a place like Hawaii.
So I clicked on California, right? And there's all these different ones that are popping up here. And then is right now the readout is the monthly fee. And then you scroll down here, and this is what they're talking about, right?
Yeah, and so you can see a semi-private room is close to $10,000 a month. So that's close to $120,000 a year, which is, who wouldn't have sticker shock? Unless you're Jeff Bezos, you're going to have a hard time paying for that amount of money. Adult daycare is a little bit more reasonable. It's more reasonable than, probably not more reasonable. It's about the same as daycare for your kids. So if you are in the unlucky position to have little kids and parents that need care at the same time, then you're paying out the yin yang for adult daycare. Assisted living facilities start in California at $5,000, but most people who are in an assisted living facility are going to pay more than that because you're going to be paying extra. You're going to need help with medications, help with laundry, help with getting dressed, things like that.
And this is all out of pocket. So
if you have long-term care insurance, then it should be paying for these things if you can get them to live up to the policy that you bought.
We'll see.
But a lot of people don't have long-term care insurance. Okay,
it just depends. You want to do another
and then
state?
let's do Texas.
So we can say we'll use a benchmark here of almost 10,000 right here.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other one would be maybe the home health aid is about 6,000 right here.
Yeah.
Right? So then we
do Louisiana.
Okay. Alrighty, Louisiana it is.
There you go. I like the way you did that.
Yeah. Okay. So you see, it's
about half. Yeah, it's about half. And so that's probably one reason why a lot of people, when they retire, move from high cost of living areas like New York or California to low cost of living areas like Florida or Texas.
We jumped to Florida. It's somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah.
So it's not as good as it could be.
Yeah. So anyway, think about how you would pay for that. Oftentimes what happens is that you've got family caregivers that are all chipping in. We have a friend whose dad needs a lot of care right now. And so she and her sister alternate. One goes for a week and then the other one goes for a week. And these are people that work full time and they're having to go before or after work. And, as often is the case in LA, you might be an hour away, an hour drive to go visit your family and take care of them.
All right. So these are, this is the prompt right here. We've been we've been iffy on, should you get long-term care insurance? The kind of way to look at this also is the money that you would be putting into that long-term care insurance policy. You could be taking that money and you could make putting it into your 401k, okay, because there's a way to bump it up. You could be doing brokerage accounts. You could be investing the money, letting it grow, and then
Yeah.
and then you just look the other way on that money, just the same way you would with a long-term care health insurance policy, and then access that when you need help.
Yeah, and a lot depends on the price of the long-term care, your health history, your family's health history, what you think. If you have a family where a lot of people have had strokes and lived for years in nursing homes after the strokes, then yeah, I'd be a lot more worried about how I'm going to pay for it.
Or the culture of your family, because we what we saw, and you guys did a great job in the discussions in this class. It was amazing for us to read through them. Is we still have a lot of different cultures that, even though they may be second, third generation that have immigrated here from other countries, well, the culture is, well, the family's always going to care. And you know what, I could take you for a tour of our house, but we have a large house. We could put an accessory living unit right over here if we wanted, and that's become an option as well. Is you figure out a way to have the older person living at your house, and then you watch over them yourself directly rather than paying a facility.
Absolutely.
Right, so.
Yeah, we joke about it. I always say if I ever have to go on to hospice care that we're just going to put like a little cabana in the backyard, and I'm going to have my own cabana.
There's one of those down at Cotton's. This place that I surf. All my deadbeat surf friends, they hang out in this palapala they made.
You can move me down there.
Hilarious.
All righty. Well, thank you everybody for a great semester.
Awesome.
If you have any questions, or if you're struggling or you're worried about your grade, let us know. We're here for you. We want you to be successful. We want our seniors to graduate. Yes.
Yes, and look at this. We've made you victorious in life by taking this course, just like the Lakers were today.
That's right.
Oh my God. How about Austin Reeves? He had a great game. All right.
It's a happy day.
Yes,
All righty. We'll fight on.
All right. Peace,
friends.
guys. Take care.